we'll start by saying a word or two, and then we will ask you for questions. So put your questions into the chat box once we ask, and we will try our best to answer them. Okay, so as is probably obvious, I'm Joanne Richards, and
And I'm Richard Bainan.
yes, okay. So we chose this as the subject for our webinar because we have, upon occasion, been asked, what does observation have to do with writing? And we always answer everything. It has everything to do with writing. So we believe that creativity starts with noticing, with attention. If you notice things about people, places, that perhaps other people have overlooked, because people are not generally necessarily good noticers, but as a writer or a journalist, you have to train yourself to observe, to notice things that just whiz past other people. And that is the first step to drafting an original point of view and breaking from the well-trodden path. Observation provides you with authentic detail. And without detail, you won't immerse your reader in your work. Without detail, your plot will be a thin strand untethered to the world, and your characters won't leap off the page. And Richard, I'm sure you have another couple of ideas too of why observation is important.
Well, for me, observation is a kind of basic function of writing because it so often supplies ideas. Um, so the ideas that form the bedrock of not just the novel, but the paragraph, the line, the creation of a particular character. Um, I have found over the years that the more time I spend actively looking, particularly at people, but also places and things, um, the more active my imagination becomes. So every year it's become um, a bit of a routine for me when we go to our retreat in Venice. Um, I generally spend a morning or two sitting on one or other cafe at one or other cafe entrance, just watching people and making notes. And I write a blog or two about my observations and about the thoughts that my observations have inspired. So I find it positively inspirational. Um, and I can also only endorse what Josie said about the way in which observation gives you um, the kind of the basis for creating an immersive reality.
Mm. And it teaches you about people. And you need to understand people, learn about people, the way they respond in different circumstances, if you want to be a writer. So I think observing also helps you with the social skills, the body language, all the means that humans use to interact and communicate with each other. Okay, so
Or
that's
not, or not to communicate
or
with each,
not. Yes, specifically.
which is just as interesting, or maybe more interesting, when you observe people not talking to each other.
Yes.
Um, and the tensions that sometimes
But then they
are
might be communicating in another way entirely with their
in all
bodies.
sorts of ways. Yeah.
Mm,
And not always lovingly, I have to say.
no. Okay, so we will take questions about observation, about how you enhance your observational skills, about detail, about the use of detail, what kind of detail, all of the above. So ask us questions. Otherwise, we will riff on off our own bats.
I'm not sure that you can riff off a bat, Josie.
No, you can't. That's yeah, entirely Liz, a mixed metaphor. Forgive me.
Okay, so Dorian says from Cape Town, how much detail is too much detail? And that's a good question because you can have too much detail. Somebody like um, who wrote the children's Bible, the children's book,
Um, um, uh,
Possession.
yes. Um, when you
A.S.
ask,
Byatt. A.S. Byatt,
yeah,
in not in all her books, I don't think, because I found Possession riveting, but in the book that she wrote called the children's book, she used too many details. She described every new character who wandered onto a page in the minutest detail until you couldn't imagine what the dramatic purpose of all the detail was. So detail always has a function, and the function is to serve your dramatic intent. Um, Usually, I mean, Josie and I, in our discussions with people, frequently say we prefer not to use the word description, but instead to use the word detail, because a description suggests slabs and slabs of it. Um, a detail, a telling detail, can stand in the place of any number of paragraphs of so-called description. Um, so usually less is more, in fact, as long
mm,
as you've got it nailed.
mm. Look for the distinguishing detail, the detail that says something about what you are wanting to say. Uh, but detail that is peripheral and doesn't have either dramatic purpose or purpose in showing us more about either the observer or the observed can probably be cut. I'm sure we'll say more about that as we go along, but I would say, yeah, that's good for a start.
Dricus, you ask whether it's more important to describe a person's clothes, or the surroundings. I think what we've said already
Yeah,
answers that.
let me, okay,
It's
let me,
about what is significant for your story.
yes,
So, are you trying to butt in here, Josie?
I'm
Please
trying
go
to
ahead.
write. Yes, so, um, you know, you can weave bits of detail in, and you are not looking to write a police description like this person. So you are not wanting to add in everything about their clothing. If their clothing is the same as everybody else's, don't describe it. But if they are distinguished by their attire, something to do with their dress, then use it. Or if there's something distinguishing about their features, or then use those details that allow us to get a sense of that person and also the person observing. Because don't forget that the person observing is is showing us what that person looks like, and they will be biased. They might love the person, hate the person. So you are showing us not just the person observed, but the observer too. It is great to have a couple of details of the environment. You don't want, and again, not slabs of description, but you can weave the odd detail through a scene. The wind suddenly picks up and the leaves rustle or whatever, because without that, your readers are viewing an interaction in a vacuum. They don't know what to picture in their mind's eye. So you do want one or two details of the environment just to allow, again, to show us more about your observer, but certainly to immerse your reader in that environment.
And
Okay.
remember that details, um, maybe the most useful details, are details about a person's behavior. So it's not when we say a descriptive detail, it doesn't have to be about the tie he's wearing. Maybe it's about the way that he uses his hands, or about the edginess with which he moves on his chair, or something else.
Or the contents of her shopping trolley, if that is distinguishing. Six packs of knickknacks and a toddler sucking a marshmallow might be distinguishing.
Mari asks, in a short story where word count is limited, how do I strike a balance between narrative that carries the story forward with a good pace and descriptive detail based on observation? And again, I think we've sort of covered that, Murray. It's as much detail as you need to achieve your objective of creating a relatable character to create a picture in your audience's mind. So it's not um, it's not struggling for room. You don't have to worry about Frankie, could you turn your sound off?
It looks like it's off from here, Richard.
Can can everyone turn their sounds off?
There we are.
Thanks. Okay. Um, I'm sorry, we're asking for silence because otherwise there's a cacophony and we can't hear ourselves think.
Is audio on?
No, audio off, please,
Hello?
Frankie.
But I had it off. I've had it off. I've just
Oh,
switched it. It's mute.
okay. That's fine. You're fine now. Okay.
Okay.
I've spent minutes on the wrong web. I was on Writer's Circle for tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh, I find this so. I can't go there, honestly. I,
All right.
Okay. Richard, on you go.
I'm not sure where I was.
am I mute or unmute?
Frankie, can you mute? Thanks. There we are. All right. You were talking. You were
I'm
just
mute
finishing
now.
up with Mari about striking a balance.
Okay. So description should never have to fight with for I've got confused now. All I'm saying is that you don't need very much detail. So it's not going to compete for the few words that you're using in a short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, it's very often more economical if you can think of just the right distinguishing point about somebody or two or about a place. It's often actually the most economical way to give us a picture of that personal place, if you're clever about using the right details. Okay, then we have Peter, who says, is there wisdom from learning body language techniques? I It's
I
interesting.
think I think it's very wise to learn body language techniques. Otherwise, you are giving away all the secrets you would otherwise want to keep. Um, and the point is that we want our characters to reveal the secrets that they want to keep through their body language, unintentionally.
Richard, I think he's asking whether it's helpful to learn body language techniques in real life.
I was answering
Oh,
that.
okay,
I was
okay.
saying that it's a good thing to learn real life body techniques because it enables you to
Read.
use them to your advantage.
Yeah,
Um, that's all.
yeah.
Okay. Uh,
Okay.
Chantal
Jay,
says, how can you use your five senses to create a more immersive observation? And
or
then, quite separate question, how can you write convincing dialogue? The answer to that really is that if you use your senses, then you will create a more immersive world, fictional world, or non-fictional world. Um, if you're not only talking about what you can see, but also what you can hear and smell and sense um, through feeling. So if you're going to create that world on a page, then it makes every kind of sense to pay attention to your senses when you're observing. And because we rely so almost exclusively, for the most part, on what we can see, um, it's a very good exercise to sit quietly somewhere and pay attention to the other senses as well.
in fact, I wanted to say two things. One is that you don't, every time you set out to write a scene, you don't have to necessarily use every single sense. Use the senses that seem to make sense for what you're trying to do dramatically and for showing your characters and showing your observer. But I wanted to just add to what Richard said, and that is that sometimes people suggest as an exercise to enhance your observational skills, take a walk around a familiar area like your neighborhood and banish sight as one of your and try to notice the smells of your neighborhood or the sounds of your neighborhood. And that will focus you on the different senses. Or taste. I often find taste is very difficult because sometimes you can say something is salty, but sometimes you have to find different words. Also smell, actually. You can sometimes say it smelled like burnt toast. That's fine. We all know what that smells like. But if there's an unfamiliar smell or taste, part of that creativity, part of the observation is trying to find the words, the images, the comparisons that will allow us perhaps to get a sense of what that taste must be like or what that smell must be like. Okay, Carol says our brains tend to look in shorthand. Aha, exactly. And that is precisely what you want to step back from as a writer. Our brains make snap decisions. We decide somebody's angry. We decide a couple are having a fight. We decide we don't like somebody we've just met. And as a writer, you want to start watching is taking two steps back from that intuitive analysis that your brain is doing. So your brain is taking all the little details of the way somebody is standing, perhaps the way he's dominating the room, perhaps the way he's talking in a loud voice. And our brain is saying, he's full of himself, I don't like him, or he's aggressive, or he's whatever. That you, as a writer, you want to take those two steps back and try to notice what it is about him so that you can show him on you would be able to show him on a page so that your reader can make those judgments, take that intuitive step so that the reader can say, aha, he seems like a very aggressive, bullying man who's full of himself. But you don't want to tell that to the reader. You want to watch, listen, focus on what it is, what the details are that make our brains analyze him in that way. It's not an easy thing to do, I want to tell you, and it takes a lot of practice. And I think it's an exercise that one needs to go on doing throughout one's writing career. It does not come easily. It's finding, or taking those steps back and finding the words, and the right comparisons and things to put that across on the page. That's hard. It takes exercise.
This ties in very well with Fiona's question. We are told, she says, to show, don't tell. And obviously, observation feeds into this. Can you comment on this? Well, what Josie's just said answers at least half of your question. The details, the observed details are showing. I mean, imagine if you took a photograph of a scene or a video of an argument, what you would have before you is a show, right? And so to describe a phenomenon, to describe what's actually happening, is necessarily a show. If you take the shortcut to your analysis and say they were arguing angrily, you're then venturing into the territory of telling, because instead of describing the details of the body language of the two people and the words that they're uttering, which would demonstrate that they are locked in a disagreement, you are saying they're arguing. They're arguing passionately is very much a tell. So the kind of accurate detail is the enemy of telling. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. When you take those two steps backwards and stop your brain from doing the analyzing for the reader, then you are showing, not telling. When you do the analyzing on behalf of the reader, then you're telling.
Okay, Liz tells a little anecdote about having observed something very interesting at a train station, but she didn't have anything to make a note in. How do you train yourself to observe closely enough to capture things in sufficient detail when you aren't in a position to scribble it on a piece of paper immediately? Yeah, difficult. It's amazing how quickly we forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know, it's agony. You kind of repeat it and repeat it and repeat it in your head so that you don't lose it.
Right on the back of your hand.
Yes. Sometimes I record a little, if I've got my phone, a little voice message to myself. But yeah. Um, okay. Adjectives and adverbs. How many are too many?
Oh,
Aha. Firstly, avoid the generic ones. So all the ones that say beautiful, awesome, majestic, quaint. Richard, any more? Um,
oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
but
you can imagine. There
yes,
are an enormous number of them, by the way,
yes.
and they're
Those are
all distinguished by one thing. They are describing what your response is, not what the thing that you purport to be describing
exactly.
is describing.
So you are telling your reader that you think something is majestic. And like it or not, they will probably skip over that and they will pay no attention to it whatsoever because generic adjectives tend to be skipped over. If you use an adjective, use one that means something that gives us a sense of something. I was quickly looking, like here is The Road, a little paragraph from The Road by Cormac McCarthy, who isn't known for overwriting. And he walked out in the grey light. Okay, there's an adjective, but it's necessary and it's specific. And he saw for the first time the burnt crust of the world. Before him, the raw concrete road buckled in the heat. So that's mainly strong verbs, strong nouns. And if you can do the job with a strong, specific verb, then you are most of the way there. Then if you need an adjective, let it be an adjective that is specific and accurate, like burnt or raw.
Gnarled, gnarled.
Gnarled. I love gnarled. So and then adverbs, same thing. Generally, if you concentrate on your verbs and make your verbs, people used to say to me, use strong verbs. And then I used to say, what the hell is a strong verb? How do you know if it's a strong verb or a weak verb? And then I worked out that what is meant by that is strong words are accurate. So instead of saying put the keys on the table, he slammed the keys on the table. He slid the keys.
He tossed them on the
He
table.
tossed them. The minute you are more accurate, your verb is stronger. So, sometimes Richard and I have some little pet hates like plonked. Plonked
Or
is a
plopped.
or plopped is a sort of, yeah, it doesn't really say much. It's not a strong word. You can almost always do away with the adverbs if you've got a good strong noun and a good accurate specific verb.
I want to add one little footnote to that, and
Do.
that is that this business about not using um, generic descriptors like awesome, wonderful, marvelous, and so on, there is one exception to that, and that is when your character is through and through full of cliches. If your character, the character that you've created, thinks in cliches, and you want that to be a feature of their personality, of who they are, then you can be excused from the overuse of the word awesome, for instance. Just as who was the Dickensian character who couldn't get her
Um,
words right?
uh, uh, Mrs.
Mrs. Malaprop. So Mrs. Malaprop congenitally used misused words or used them in the wrong way. And that was fantastic. That was a character work.
Okay, Ivan. I almost always forget to observe people with whom I come in contact. Is it better to rather observe people with whom I'm not interacting? Well, I think start that way, and you will get into the habit of observing people that you're interacting with as well. But it's a good exercise to watch other people interact as a start, I think, and notice. And then you can use those. It sort of teaches you. It gets you into the habit, and then in any case, you can use those kind of details for your characters.
But it is a habit, Ivan. You know how women are extraordinarily alert to the kind of footwear that other people are wearing. They've trained themselves over many decades to do that. And it always astonishes me that years after we've had an encounter with somebody, she might say something about the shoes that they were wearing back in the day. It passes me by. I've never got that skill, but I think you can develop it.
Okay. All right. We have a question. Do you agree with the maxim show, don't tell? And to what extent? Have you got some examples where you might want
Want
to
to
use
use.
one or the other? Um, I should I start or you?
Yes, you go ahead.
All right. I think I definitely agree with showing, don't not telling. Definitely, because you are uh, uh, um your reader is an active reader because they like to do the analyses themselves. They like to read the signals, watch the signs. They don't like to be told what someone is thinking or feeling if they're being observed. They would much rather read the expressions that are given to them, in their mind's eye, and and that uh, smell perhaps the the sweat of anxiety, but whatever they want to make those judgments for themselves. There are writers who use telling through their characters, I would say, and one of those is a writer like Philip Roth, who through he had a character who told a lot, and it was sort of interesting, and it said something about the character, that the character would tell us things. And then that, if you like that kind of writing, that can be very satisfying. But where you have characters interacting, doing things, or where the reader can interpret for themselves, I would say show and allow them to do the work.
Okay, I like disagreeing with Josie from time to time. Um, it's part of the literary conflict that distinguishes our relationship. Um, every single book that I have ever read, with very few exceptions, there are one or two exceptions, are a mix of telling and showing. All right, so we are not, in fact, I know that Josie agrees with me on this.
Yeah.
We are not advocating that everything that you write has to be showing. The fact is that showing a simple thing like here's a something we use in one of our courses. Arthur was a very cruel man, right? Is a tell. Now, we would say it would be much more powerful if you showed him being cruel in a scene, then you wouldn't have to say he was a very cruel man. We would see him torturing an animal, let's say. But if you turned every show, every tell into a show, using scenes, using dialogue, inevitably, whatever book you happen to be working on or short story you happen to be writing would become immensely long because it takes so many more words to show than it does to tell. So you could tell the story of the Second World War in a few paragraphs, well, maybe a few chapters, but to show it in full would take, I mean, it would take an army of writers their entire lifespan to show the war in all of its detail. So you have to say, okay, I'm going to reserve my shows to begin with, to the emotionally important scenes, the emotionally important moments of my story. I cannot pass over an incident in my story by writing Marjorie and David had a humdinger of a fight, which led to Marjorie booking into a hotel. You can't do that because you've 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 avoided the drama of that fight. So it kind of begs to be shown in action and dialogue. But on the other hand, there can be sequences where your characters are waiting for news to come to them um, from the front, from the war. All right. And they have to wait for weeks for that. You can't show them waiting for weeks. You have to condense that passage, you can condense that waiting, that period of time into a tell, which might be a paragraph long, or it might be a page or two long. And you might intersperse it with a few lines of dialogue between the characters as they become more concerned. But it doesn't qualify as a necessary show.
Mm. And in actual fact, I do completely agree with Richard. I just hadn't said that yet. But yes, I mean, if you say she spent the afternoon doing her taxes, but you need the reader to know that she was doing her taxes because she wasn't somewhere else. That's you don't need to spend a scene showing her doing her taxes unless she picks up a huge anomaly or something, in which case it's important. And sometimes you might show you're trying to show the progression of an abusive marriage, say. So you will show 2 or 3 scenes of his cruelty, and then you will give us a passage, a non-scene passage, a passage that is not actually a scene, but that runs over the next 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever you want to run over without, continuing, because you can't continue to have that many scenes. You use the scenes, the distinguishing scenes, and then you run over a period of time through telling. Yeah, I think that deals with that.
All right. And Dricka asks a question about the possibility of being accused of plagiarism or using artificial intelligence if words in your story are the same as words in another story. Well, I'm not a mathematician or a statistician, Dricus, but the odds against two writers writing substantially the same story as each other using the same words, the odds against it are so astronomical that I wouldn't spend a second of your time worrying about the possibility
Yeah.
of that happening.
There are so many words and used in different relations to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. You know the old story about if you had a room full of monkeys hammering on typewriters, what are the odds of them writing the entire works of Shakespeare, given enough time, like infinity? Well, even infinity apparently is not enough time for that to be possible. Um, as to the use of AI, well, at the moment, it's almost always possible to spot AI. If you give a prompt to one of the AIs, a sufficiently detailed prompt, it will write something for you, but it will be, at the moment, it's still possible to identify it and frown at the writer for passing it off as his own work. There's no plagiarism, of course, involved because what an AI writes is yours. Um, of course, what happens next week or next year or in 2030, we'll have to revisit that again. We might all be using AI to write our glorious works of original fiction. How do I observe people without staring? I feel uncomfortable, says Sally, watching people intensely. Sally, wear dark glasses. I know what you mean. I do watch people intensely, and if they catch my eye, um, I'm sure I blush. I can't tell you whether I do or not because I can't see myself, but uh, it can be awkward. And the same is even more true if you eavesdrop on people and they catch you listening or making notes or recording them on your cell phone. Um, I don't know how you can do it, except to be discreet. Dark glasses, newspaper up, little hole in the newspaper,
Use a little peripheral vision. You can
peripheral
often
vision.
start by placing your eye line just alongside them,
Yeah.
as if you're staring fixedly at the wall in a dream.
Um, Jeannie Albrecht, I love your name, Jeannie, um, says, so detail would be just a glimpse, short and sweet. It can be, yes. It
Yeah.
can be a phrase. A single phrase can work it.
Okay, then there's a long.
Lots of advice for Frankie.
Could you link a detail to a memory, something evocative? Absolutely. And I found that people responded enormously in my first book to the evocative details from the past, particularly smell and sound, because you know for yourself that smells remain and you catch a glimpse of a smell and it can, throw you back into the past. And the same with the sound, a certain song. It can flash you back into the emotion of a moment. So, using that, I think is, yeah, is, and also if you use a specific detail like a song, say, it will do the same for your readers, actually.
Just don't quote the words of the song.
No, yeah,
That's always a problem
yeah.
because somebody will come knocking at your door asking for royalties. Okay, so Mari Ordendal says, could another reason for suspending intuitive judgment be to enable you to think about why that character behaves that way and how or where you can feed that into the narrative? Okay, now I'm not sure if I think Josie was talking about the judgment on the page, right? Where you tell
I
your
was
reader.
I was saying try not to analyze their expressions, body language, demeanor, and tell that analysis to your reader. Rather show them the demeanor, the body language, and the expression, and allow your reader to make the analysis and judgment for themselves.
I mean, one interesting, just something that struck me, and it's probably not an original thought at all, is that if your observing character, your protagonist, is watching two people in a restaurant for some good plot reason, um, and he can't hear what they're saying, but he's looking at what they're doing and how they're comporting themselves in relation to each other, um, he will be trying to work out what's going on. And of course, if he's trying to work that out, then because he's your perspective character, you can put down those calculations on the page. You can write what he's thinking. And so, in a way, he will be mimicking what the reader is, you're encouraging the reader to do. He doesn't know whether they're angry, but they sometimes seem to be angry. Um, and he's using the evidence of his eyes and his ears to play with this puzzle. It's quite fun, actually.
Um, Richard, I'm
Yes.
going to go skip over to Sarah, who says, will you be sharing some content on the points on your invitation? How to develop sharper observation skills as a writer, techniques for translating observations into vivid prose, and ways to authentically capture human interactions. Some of that I think has been ongoing. When I so how to develop sharper observation skills as a writer, take a notebook with you everywhere. Notice landscapes, notice people, watch little interactions between people, and force yourself to find the words, phrases, to translate those onto the page. It's hard, but you have to keep doing it. Some of the other uh, exercises are things like I mentioned earlier. Try to notice all the smells of your neighborhood, the sounds of your neighborhood, the tastes of your childhood. Try to notice certain things. Somebody once said it's a good observational skill to go back over your Take-A-Lot or your Amazon history and notice the things that you bought and try to write down, oh, that was when I took up scuba diving, and give little stories about those, because those will give you a sense of a life in a way if you shop online. Richard, any more exercises?
I just wanted to correct myself. Sharon has corrected me, but I've also just looked it up because I could not believe that my memory of Mrs. Malaprop from Dickens was so wrong. Dickens didn't invent her, Sheridan did, and she appears as a character in The Rivals. So there you go. And for
Thank
the last 40 years, I have believed that I read the Dickens book with Mrs. Malaprop in it.
you.
Quite incredible. Yeah.
Anyway, any more exercises to sharpen observational skills?
Yes, well, I just wanted to recall something that the New York Times tried last year. Over a series of weeks, each week they offered um, a picture, a painting, um, in highly pixelated, so a very detailed painting that you could blow up on your screen. And the challenge was to look at it for 10 minutes, to look at it and to really look at it. To look at a picture for 10 minutes is actually, 10 minutes is a long time. And to work out, to draw as many conclusions from it as you can, to note everything on it, the merest detail. And because you could zoom in on details of the picture, you really could. And I did it for, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks, and I found it the most remarkable exercise. And so I urge you to do that.
That's a good exercise. Another one is to take something that you walk past every day and it is absolutely familiar to you and force yourself to look at it as though it were the first time you were seeing it and hearing it and smelling it. And try to see and view that little scene or whatever it is as a stranger might.
As an anthropologist from Mars might.
Yes, yes,
And,
exactly.
and another similar exercise, and I'm borrowing it from something that I did at one of our workshops years ago. Um, write a write a scene of you walking down your road, but you are blind, all right? So you are walking down the road and you are passing by um, the entrances to the different houses, or if it's, or whatever the circumstances of your road happen to be. But write it, just a few paragraphs will do, without recourse to anything that you can see. So it has to be what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can
Feel under your feet.
feel under your feet.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic, I don't know what it was about because it's a liberating experience to do that. I don't know why, but it's,
Okay, let me quick.
it unleashes those other senses.
Yeah. I'll quickly move on to her other points. Techniques for translating observations into vivid prose. I would say the most important of those is to be as specific and accurate as you possibly can. Never say the old car. Say the rusty 1967 Mustang with a cracked windshield. Never say old clothes. Say a 1940s style floral dress with a torn hem and a missing button. The more specific you are, the more it draws the reader in. So that's one. As we said, avoid the generics. Use strong verbs, strong nouns. Use just enough, the ones that are distinguishing. Don't use too much, and use the sensory details. And I would say then you're a long way towards writing really immersive and powerful copy. Ways to authentically capture human interactions. Well, there again, I think we've more or less covered that by saying take 2 steps backwards, watch the body language, watch the expressions, try to find the words that will put across the way someone is interacting. And I thought I would just read you a little paragraph here and see. Here, somebody has just used the details of body language incredibly subtly. At the end of the evening, she stepped into the lift, and so did he. The lift gave a small lurch and began to move. His eyes found hers, and he smiled. She smiled back. There was a minuscule pause during which he cocked his head. She tilted a shoulder in the ghost of a shrug. Still holding her eyes, he reached across and trailed a finger ever so lightly up her black-stockinged inner thigh. It reached the point where the rounded sides of her crossover skirt came together and drew away. And I think that writer has attempted to put across just the body language between those two, which made him feel that he could do that, I guess, or that, and there nothing is explained. It doesn't say they exchanged a glance of mutual, um, lust or whatever. Nothing is explained. It's in the tiny details of the body language. It has taken those steps backwards.
Can I just pick up on Brent Quinn's remarks? Hello, Brent. Long time no talk. You're in Greece for a year, you write in a different coffee shop every day, you don't speak the language, but ironically, you feel that you're reading deep character way better that way. Like a movie without subtitles. Well, yes. And that's, in a way, that is similar to my exercise of writing a blind walk down the road. You can't understand what people are saying. You have to rely on their animation, their body language, their apparent relationships, apparent through the ways that they behave. And it does, as you say, heighten one's intuition. The great thing about it, of course, is that you can never test whether your conclusions are correct. But that's okay, because it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. And as somebody said, different artists will see things in completely different ways. They'll see different colors even, and writers are the same. And also, don't forget that it's not just you, the writer, giving us the details. Part of using details vividly in a story is thinking, how will your character view that scene? And your character has an occupation, is a certain kind of person emotionally, is in a good space or a bad space, has just been broken up with or not, has just met someone and is all glowy with happiness. And that will affect the way your character views other people and the world around them. So you can use that to help show your reader more about your observing characters, which is a lovely tool to use. So sometimes that's another exercise you could use for enhancing. Sometimes be not yourself. Sometimes be somebody else observing a scene and see how they would view the scene and whether it would be different from the way you would view the scene. And that,
Bearing in mind that you are yourself a construct.
yes, exactly. Yes. Please don't forget that in July, and Richard, you can talk about Stowe. We're going to, those of you who are in South Africa, we're going to Barrydale. Those details will, for the weekend, there's a workshop on memoir, writing memoir with Joanne Hitchens and myself. The week that follows the Monday to the Friday is a retreat for anybody writing anything, not just memoir. So if you want to come, and you will have an hour of one-on-one time per day, but you'll have the time and space to write. And great food, by the way. And Richard, talk about Stowe.
Well, I'm caught on the wrong foot because I can't remember what the dates are. Do you have them there?
Oh, no, but I tell you what, oh, there we
Oh,
are.
the
Liz is showing us.
date. Okay, great.
Okay. Okay. But they will be in you will get a thank you
All right,
letter
so
and stuff. Yeah.
uh, we meet in Stowe for a weekend,
6th
and
to the 8th of June. Sorry.
Thank you.
thank you very much. Liz will be with us. Hello, Liz. And we will have, well, basically a lot of fun, and I'll do a lot of writing. We've been running these weekend ones in Stowe for the last several years now.
Yeah.
They've
Ju-
always been, they're small. Of course, it's restricted, I guess, to people living in England, although you're at liberty to fly in wherever you happen to be.
Sorry, someone's asking for the dates for Barrydale, and I will tell you now, it's the beginning of July. And then Venice, although Venice, we're still in the same position. Venice is basically full, but I think there are one or two penciled in. So if you're dead keen, shout, and we'll see. Barrydale, the memoir weekend starts on the 4th, the Friday the 4th, and runs 4th, 5th, 6th. And then from the 7th till the 11th is the retreat, July. Okay, and Venice, as always, is in October. And it's wonderful. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think that concludes our business.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope that was helpful and useful.
If it wasn't, I don't know why you hung on.